Relief doesn't equal resilience. Getting sick is normal. What becomes less common is fully recovering. When people get sick or don't quite bounce back, it's usually not because they aren't doing enough to support their body. It's because the body struggles to coordinate a response and then shut it down. When I say coordinate, I'm talking about the brain. The brain decides when protective systems turn on, and just as importantly, when they're able to turn back off. That ability, shifting out of protection and into recovery, is what allows people to actually feel better again. Inflammation is a good example of the body responding to a signal from the brain. It's supposed to rise when you're injured or fighting an infection. Think fever, swelling, soreness. Those are signs the immune system is doing its job. Inflammation isn't the problem. The problem is when it doesn't fully resolve after the threat has passed. Stress hormones work the same way, useful in short bursts, damaging when they stay elevated. When these systems shut off the way they're designed to, recovery follows. Sleep becomes restorative, not just long, but actually helpful. Energy returns, thinking feels clearer. When they don't, you see what's becoming increasingly common since the pandemic: lingering brain fog, sleep that never feels restorative, low energy, a nervous system stuck on. It's easy to blame the virus. Much of this comes down to whether the brain can regulate or whether it stays stuck in overdrive long after the threat is gone. That connection is impossible for me to ignore because right now we're surrounded by more wellness tools than ever: red light therapy, hyperbaric oxygen, IV therapy, cold exposure, and much of it helps. But here's what rarely gets addressed. Every one of these interventions still depends on the brain to do its job. The brain is the switchboard. It determines whether the body powers down into repair or stays locked in stress. When the brain is dysregulated, even the best tools have to work harder, and results become less predictable. Since the pandemic, people are paying attention to resilience in a different way, not just recovery, but prevention. How well the body holds up under stress, how quickly it responds, how easily it settles back to baseline. You can see that shift everywhere: in the explosion of non traditional wellness options, in the money being invested in recovery and performance tools, in the desire to feel better, think sharper, recover faster, and perform at a higher level before illness hits. What often gets missed is that most of these approaches don't actually look at how the brain is functioning. They support the body, but they don't measure brainwave patterns, which means they can't show whether the nervous system is shifting out of stress and into regulation. That's where many conversations around recovery miss the mark. We assume things are better because symptoms went away or because enough time passes, but regulation isn't passive, it's an active process. When you can look at brainwave patterns over time, you can see whether the brain is adapting or still working overtime. This is an example of what that can look like. It's not a diagnosis, it's not a label, it's simply a before and after snapshot of how the brain was organizing itself and how the organization shifted with targeted training focused on regulation. What matters here isn't perfection, it's the brain's ability to shift, to reorganize, to move out of constant protection mode and back toward balance. That capacity underlies resilience. It influences how the body responds to stress, how efficiently it recovers, and how easily it returns to the baseline after illness or disruption. If you aren't looking at brainwaves, you're guessing about resilience, recovery, and prevention. For decades, medicine and wellness have circled a quiet truth: suppressing symptoms isn't the same as restoring resilience. That's where brain health comes back into the picture because it shapes how the nervous system coordinates response and recovery. When the brain can move efficiently between states, everything downstream works better. When it can't, the body compensates. And compensation is exhausting. Medicine and innovation have given us more ways than ever to support the body. Most of them help, at least for a while. What's striking is how rarely we pause to look at how the brain is organizing those responses in the first place. And that matters, especially now. Illness, stress, travel, and disruption don't arrive one at a time. Respiratory viruses like influenza, RSV, and COVID continue to circulate, often overlapping. That means many people aren't dealing with a single stressor. They get sick, try to recover, then get hit again before they fully reset. For some, they never felt fully well after the last illness before the next one arrived. In that state, the brain is under constant demand. How well the brain manages that load influences how resilient the body's responses ultimately are. Which is why, if we want better prevention, smoother recovery, and more sustainable resilience, we can't keep treating brain function as optional or secondary. Wellness, longevity, and recovery can't be addressed in compartments. Brainwaves influence how the body responds to stress, illness, and recovery. When brain function isn't considered, we end up guessing. That's not the same as knowing.